everybody. Welcome to iCast Guidance, your weekly Dungeons and Dragons and TTRPG podcast, where every week Rich, Garret, and I pick up a subject around the culture of gaming and discuss it with you. So without further ado, sharpen up those daggers. We're going to get started right now. You guys, I fucked up so bad last week, and I'm really sorry because that conversation was gold.
It was a very good conversation, but
devastating. It started off the year on a low and will never recover.
Thank you, Rich.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Really,
that was still officially the end of the year.
So comforting.
Oh, it's the end of the year. We're going to be okay this year then,
This
guys.
is our first actual recording in 2025.
Yes.
Oh, we're good.
So we're off to a good start.
We're chilling.
Yeah,
Plus, it was a really good conversation, but it can be just for us.
And I'm going to say that Rabbit.com last week came in with who heard the podcast mentioned, it's not a bad idea just to have a checklist, which we have a checklist, right? But sometimes there are things in the check that don't make the checklist because they're so obvious. And in this one, that was one of those things. I'm not going to go into all the details because it's just going to bore everybody.
But we're adding to the checklist as we go, as Todd messes up.
Yeah. So I think, and Garret, you made the suggestion that we start off the podcast this week with maybe each just because last week's podcast was about New Year's resolutions. And we said a lot of great stuff in there. But we thought, let's just each list one of the ones we mentioned so that we have something in our podcast history that we can check in on in 6 months and in a year.
Yes.
Right. So do any of you want to start that off?
I'm glad to. Yeah. Let me grab for those of you that will see this on YouTube Shorts, you'll appreciate the visual. So my New Year's resolution is that within the past year, I've struggled to get in touch with my characters. It's hard to get to know who they are and be able to consistently play them. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to find a way to get to know my characters better and get in touch with their emotions and to be able to play them to that level. And so the way I'm trying to do that is I've found this solo RPG, which I bought at PAX, called Be Like a Crow. It's created by Tim Roberts, and it's basically you play as a bird in a specific setting. And what I want to do is I want to take my character, Circe, from our main campaign. I want to take her through this story as if she's having a dream and see how she responds to all these stimuli, kind of break her down to her most animalistic instincts and see how she responds to all these things, and then build her character back up through that. So, and feasibly, I could do this for every single character that I make in the future. So,
yeah, I think it's going to be awesome to actually touch base again down the road once you've done this and sort of really assess what happened here? How did I learn about this character through this? And I think that's honestly, I think it's a great selling point for whoever makes that TTRPG.
Yeah,
I think it's a great selling point.
Since this should be quick as our intro, I'll go next.
Okay.
My resolution was to play characters that are less similar to myself. So I wanted to discover more about myself through these characters, maybe playing characters that, are more trusting or kind, or, you know what I mean? Instead of the typical loner, fighter, my dad died type of stuff. You know what I mean? That everybody
chaotic.
starts. Yeah, chaotic.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody a little bit more grounded, and I really just want to test myself.
reliable.
Okay, we don't need to keep going. A little hurtful.
Wow.
But yeah, I just want to test myself by playing unique characters.
I like that. All right, I'm going to bring it right in.
Yeah, come on.
Sorry. My goal was, the campaign that we played for the whole last year. I felt like I wasn't really, almost like what Nathan said about Circe, not that connected with your character. What I really want to focus on is goals and what I really want to do with that character, because I haven't really thought about it. I want to come up with, short-term, long-term goals and really just kind of plan an outlook as to what I want to do with this character that I've been investing in, really, and feel more connected to it. So I think it's a good thing, like Todd was saying, to check back in, 3-6 months, whatever. How's that going? So that was mine.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm kind of in a similar vein, but from the GM's point of view, we're honing skills. I think we're all talking about getting better at this, obviously, in the new year. And in mine, I think it's important for me. I've got an easy one and a hard one. My easy one is I'm definitely going to try at least 2 new TTRPGs this year and potentially make videos with them. And the third one is the harder one, which is I am going to hone my skills more heavily in one area. And for me, it's going to be Daggerheart, particularly around the narration and storytelling of the Hope and Fear die system, because that's an interesting one for me. And I want to perfect that, if perfection's even a word I can use. So
I love that. Wonderful goals all around, gentlemen.
Yeah. So we're going to check back in with those down the road, and we will let you know how it's going. But we're curious about your New Year's resolutions as well. So if you head over to YouTube and hit up Wither and Bloom Studios on YouTube, find this podcast and leave us a comment. What are your New Year's resolutions, particularly around gaming? I mean, I get it if you want to read more or lose weight or stop eating sweets or quit smoking, whatever, but let us know. And I think we did this today, recapping that in lieu of listener comments this time around. I think we should jump right into today's topic.
Let's do it, baby.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Why we game. There's a lot we could talk about here, but who wants to kick us off?
Well, I think why we game is, again, I'm looking forward to hearing all of your reasons. Mine are a little bit more around the notion that I'm an artist. And I think my artistic background, my art brain is going to creep in here. But who's got something they're dying to say? Like, why do we game?
I mean, fuck it. I'm going to take it.
Garret,
let's go.
I'm going in.
What is this?
All right. So everyone, I mean, maybe not everyone. I'm going to say 95% of the people out there have a hectic ass fucking life. Everything is going on, paying bills, fucking whatever, gas prices, grocery prices. We all know it. Politics. I love to come to this space that we've created to leave it all behind. Just forget about, that 4 hours every Tuesday night. And we're lucky to have this.
Oh my God, we are.
We are so lucky that we've created this group dynamic here over at, Three Ducks Tavern, that we've, the family, the friends that we've created, and just step away from reality for that 4 hours. That's what I love. That is why I have put myself into this, because I feel it's healing. I don't know about you guys. What do you guys think?
Healing is a great word.
That's my main one, really.
For me, it's like my biggest fear about growing up is that I'll like get a job, get a 9-to-5, 5 days a week, be in that routine where I wake up, I go to work, I get home, I do tasks, I go to bed. And I would hate if I have nothing that interrupts that. Like maybe I go shopping, I go grocery shopping on the weekend. I'm a person who likes adventure. I'm a person who likes a break from routine.
Mm-hmm.
I need it. I thrive in that. And this past semester, when everything was really just getting like methodical and monotonous, like having the Tuesday night where like, yes, it's a fucking commute home, and God fucking damn it, I hate the roads around my fucking college campus, but like having the Tuesday night where I could just come and like be with people that I really love being around and tell a fucking story and have fun and play something, like that is so fucking important. And I feel like as long as I have that in my future, like that will help me
not feel as monotonous.
Yeah. Feel like I'm a part of something, creating something.
I think there's a level of connection that you get at a table like this, playing a game like this, that is really hard to get anywhere else in the world. You know what I mean? We're all kids again around this table, and we're vulnerable and we connect, and you feel like a part of something.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Well, I also, so I'm going to jump in here because number one, I found some really cathartic moments in doing the research for this, because I think we all know why we come to the table, right? But then when I really needed to hammer out and articulate exactly why, I started reading a little bit and looking in different places. And I found some things that like lit up some light bulbs for me. And I was like, oh my God, yeah. And one of them comes from a book that I have called Game Storming, which is about game design. It's about brainstorming, but in the region of making games. And I'm working on an episode of this podcast where we talk about game design and some of those things. But in Game Storming, which is a book by O'Reilly Press, Dave Gray, Suni Brown, and James Macanufo, there's a line in there that says, when you're faced with the unexpected, to improvise is to be in the moment, to proceed without a plan. And I'm thinking to myself, the unexpected, this is some place that my life has always sort of thrived in and also never been allowed out of. So I've learned to thrive there, right? And so now all of a sudden, I'm allowed to come do a thing where I take the thing I grew up with, the unexpected, and I capitalize on that for fun, which is really kind of an interesting thing. And I also realized that as an artist, this is how I thrive as an artist, because the unexpected iterations, the unexpected outcomes of art making are what make art a wonderful place to be, right? It's not like, oh, I have an idea. I'm going to make a thing and this thing is going to look like this thing. And then I work towards making the thing look like that thing. No, I want the thing to speak back to me. I want to have the dialogue. I want it to like change and evolve over the whole course of it. And I'm like, oh my God, gaming and art making are almost the same thing, or at least TTRPGs. Games that have flexibility like this, for me, are like being an artist.
Well, we've always described it as like a big cauldron in the center of the table, and that's like the melting pot of the story, and everybody's contributing to it. It's not like a solo thing. It's the most collaborative version of storytelling you could probably get.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it does a really good job for us of, allowing us to be in the moment. Like when we come down here and play and we talk about immersion, we are in the moment. We're together as a group and we love being together and joking around and doing all those things. But all of the rest of the world of distractions goes away.
Gone. And there's nothing like the feeling of coming home after like just a series of wow, what the fuck moments that you have with your party. Like there were a few sessions. Now I always go home feeling good, like where I'm like, that was fun. But there are a few, hey, stop it with the eyebrows. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I'm not getting any happy endings here. Anyway.
Whoa. Do you want that?
Whoa. I mean, shit. Anyway, but there are a few sessions where like I will go home and I will just like, my dad will be downstairs. I'm like, dude, holy shit, that was fucking awesome. And there's no feeling that tops that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, like, there have been times when I go home and I'm like affected by the game. Like there's some bleed going on. Like when me and Garret finished Barnacle and Astor's story, like I was genuinely affected that night. And it took me like 20 minutes to like look at Garret the same way. You know what I mean? And that's a beautiful thing. I think that, we connected, it was nice.
I remember there was one night, I think it was Thrud. So Eric and I were arguing about something in character. Our characters were arguing. It was about money that we were getting paid for a task. Now, me as Nathan, the player, I was not feeling any certain way about the money itself, but I knew Circe was very charged up about it. So I was playing her as she was charged up about it. And Eric was playing Thrud the same way. So these two are going back and forth. It's like, it is a verbal like battle, all out war. And stepping away from that at the end, I had realized like, I'm getting worked up about this over something I initially did not care about. And something like that I'm just playing because I think I know my character.
You're in the zone.
Cares about it. I was in the zone and I had to be like, whoa, okay, all right. This is I'm coming at Eric now. Yeah. I need to stop.
But that's how connected we are to this game and what we're doing.
I think
how lucky are we to be able to
do that? And I think it was so surprising because I think that was my first time where that happened, where I was like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's really important, though, for us to take a moment. I know this is obvious material that I'm about to throw out there, but I think it's important to take a moment that the gaming that we're talking about is different from, we're not being inclusive here of all that lies on the gaming table, right?
No.
Because this is specific. I mean, I know for a fact, like Nathan, your dad and I had a conversation once, and you know, your dad is a fantastic mind around game mechanics, gameplay, psychology, all of those things. And we were having this really good conversation once, and it was about, I'll try and be as anonymous here as I can, but somebody he knows brought home a potential suitor.
Yeah.
And that person mentioned that their favorite game was Uno.
Oh,
I think it was Uno. And he was like, you're fucking out of this family.
Yeah.
So gaming is, I think what we have to realize here is there's lots of games out there, and they all sort of have different levels of goals. The goal of certain games is very, very restrictive in some respects and fuzzy in other respects, right? And so I think that we really love those games that have this kind of flexibility and fuzzy, like unable to see outcome, right?
Right. Well, that's funny that I know exactly what he's talking about. I know exactly what he's talking about. Yeah, that person still tries to talk to me all the time. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Your favorite game is Uno. Anyway,
tell him.
Well,
the Uno slander is crazy.
The interesting thing about that, though, like
man,
Uno's a fun game. If your favorite game is Monopoly, however, you're wrong. It's a terrible game.
Well, let's make it a delineation. We are about tabletop role playing games. We're not about board games.
The question is, why do we game?
No, what we do, like on a weekly basis.
Here,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure, on our own, we all support board games. I got a whole, library of them.
Well,
you know what I mean?
hang on. I wasn't trying to just put us in the space of the role-playing game because, for example, Garret picked up Return to Dark Tower at PAX, not necessarily a role-playing game, but has fuzzy outcomes, right? It has potential to go in places you don't expect. That, to me, is a great game. That's something I want to, like, we've been playing Crokinole.
A fucking Crokinole.
Right?
I fucking love it.
Not a role-playing game at all.
No, not at all.
My God, what a fantastic game.
It's such a simple premise.
So I think what happens here is I see a potential for us to lump in a lot of different games outside of the role-playing game space that go towards that.
Right. Well, here's what I think games in general, like games like Return to Dark Tower and TTRPGs. Here's what I think they share. We play them to challenge our intellect.
You nailed. That's what I was going to say.
To hone ourselves against the game, against the strategy, against the other players, to become sharper. Because if we don't exercise our brain, my earring keeps falling off. Because if we don't exercise our brain, it's like a muscle where it's never going to get better. It's never going to get sharper. You're never going to get smarter. I mean, if anything, it's just going to dull, right? So the thing I have against Uno and Monopoly, they're great games. They're great games to play, but they're games, especially like War, the card game. You know, War, where it's like flip a card and whoever's higher. There's no thinking. There's no thinking at all. But if you're playing a TTRPG, if you're playing Crokinole, you have to think about how you're shooting the little discs. It's like playing billiards or pool. You have to think about, how am I interacting with this game? Am I doing it the best I can? And trying to predict what other people are doing. You're using your entire brain.
Oh, for sure.
I think that's where I'm trying to distill what it is that, like if someone came to me and said, what's the best game ever made? In your opinion, what's the best game ever made? I'm always going to be tied for two games. I'm not going to be able to pick one out. And they are on opposite sides of the spectrum, but both challenge my brain and my intellect.
Wait, I know what you're going to say. Can I guess?
You can guess. I would love to be guessed.
D&D and chess.
That's exactly right. And I'm not, oh my God, that is exactly right.
Do I know you or do I know you, Todd?
Man, well, because, did you know, fun fact, and then we'll get on with the topic. Did you know that there are more possible combinations of moves on a chessboard than there are atoms in the observable universe?
I believe it.
It's incredible.
I took probability.
That's nuts.
Oh yeah, math man.
Here we go.
That's right.
That's insane. I have an interesting observation. Where you were kind of going, Nathan. I find that I like games where players versus players instead of players versus the game. Because when we were at PAX and we played that whale game, it was a resource management and we weren't against each other.
Right.
I was like, what is the point of this?
Kind of
I want to play
against each other.
something where I can beat people like it's like the mole, where like it's your intellect versus mine.
Right.
Or, you know what I mean? Something like charades. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do quite enjoy when you go to like an escape room and it's your team versus like whoever designed that escape room. That's fun to me too. You know what I mean?
Well, listen, I think what we're doing here is we're talking about, you know, in the end of the day, it's what's the obstacle, right? So we have a willingness to participate in an event that we have to overcome a challenge. We have to overcome an obstacle. This is the whole point of games in general, right? So number one, it's not a game if you're not willing, right? You have to be willing to play, right? Otherwise it's work. And two, we have a set of perceived obstacles that we have to get past. So in that case, it's the escape room. In the case of monikers, it is this idea that you have limitations placed on you that you have to kind of get past. In the sense of Dungeons and Dragons, we have to now all of a sudden function as a campaign, get through a story, et cetera, et cetera. But the obstacles could be obstacles that create competition, or the obstacles could be obstacles that need collaboration. Like a fantastic game in the collaborative sense is the game Pandemic, which was oddly released before the pandemic.
I love Pandemic.
Pandemic's a great game, right? But it's everybody at the table, and it's not necessarily it is a little bit resource management, right? But hang on. The game is really working hard against you. Basically, the world population is going to die and you've got to stop it. And it's really quite good.
It sounds fun.
But, you know, I think at the end of the day, what we're talking about a lot here is this idea of the perceived obstacle,
Right.
which is kind of interesting to think about.
And overcoming that.
Right. Sometimes the perceived obstacle is your opponent within the limitations of the game.
Right.
And sometimes the obstacle is the game itself. Right.
When talking about like D&D and other TTRPGs specifically, I was thinking about like, why do we play collaborative storytelling games? And I think it's related to why we dream. So when we go to sleep and we have all this information that we've collected throughout the day, your brain is actively filing things that are like lodged in short-term memory, whatever survived all the tasks of your day, and putting it away. And you're running through things and you're running through scenarios. Like it's especially, or like you're running through scenarios related to whatever you've been thinking about in that day, whatever data you've gained or whatever data you've accessed. If you've ever worked in the service industry and you've worked a holiday and you know it is just busy, fucking terrible all day, you've probably gone home and had a dream that there was a customer that was getting really angry and you couldn't help them, right? Yeah, Todd is like...
I used to have those dreams all the time.
All the time. And it's because the information that you've like gained from the day, like high stress, high level information, your brain is going, oh, fuck, I have to practice this, right? Which is what dreams are about. Like your brain is walking you through scenarios or trying to, you know, maybe tell you something. We don't really know how sleep, I don't fucking know how sleep works, but that's sort of a way that I understand dreams. And I think it's very interesting to look at the way that we create stories together at a table as opposed to how we individually create stories in our dreams. We come to the table with things from our own life that either we intentionally want to work through or unintentionally end up working through, and we play through these scenarios. We create stories that comfort us or challenge us to become better people.
It's cathartic.
Yeah.
You know, it's self-expression.
Yeah.
I think that was really well said.
Thank you.
Well, and I love that notion. You said it briefly about practice, because the dream tells us we have to practice these things. Right. And in a lot of ways, games are a kind of practice, especially the storytelling kind. I mean, we understand that if I practice bowling enough, I'm going to be able to knock down all the pins more easily. But with storytelling, it's a different kind of practice. And It's about how intuitively we can create, or improvisation, how quickly we can sort of move through an idea. And the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Or even like, how do you respond to a scenario?
Right.
Like there are some very like emotionally challenging moments that can happen at these tables. And sometimes you have to think about how you as a person would respond to it, and you don't know. And other times you have to think about how your character would respond to it. Either way, you're challenging yourself and your emotional intelligence.
I think where I find comfort in this is in the uncertainty and the fact that the game has an outcome that I cannot see. And I enjoy the fact that I cannot see it.
Yes.
When the game has an outcome that I can clearly see and it's going to land on one side or the other, okay, there might be a lot of fun things to do on the way to that goal. But, and that might make it a good game for me or not such a good game for me.
Right.
But ultimately, if I can't quite see the goal, I'm in. I'm locked in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Agreed.
yeah.
And like, it's nice that like we get to go on these adventures. And like when we look back on them, they feel like fun, real experiences we went through together, right? But we get to do this in a safe environment. And that's the difference between doing it in real life and doing it here together, things that we'll never get to do in real life. We get to feel like we did them.
Yeah. And on that point, and then we got to go to a break, but on that point, you're talking about part of the psychology of reflecting on this, because sometimes I'll think about something that happened during a game and I'll unpack it a week later in my head and I'll be like, wait a minute, what was I doing there? Was that really about this issue? Or you know what I mean? And that's part of Bleed, right? But there's also this kind of unpacking thing that I do for myself. Yeah. So I want to talk about that after the break. So should we do that? Can we jump to a break?
Let's go to break.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, you guys, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back. You're going to hear some words, but we'll be back in a few minutes. Hello, esteemed listeners. Listen, if you like what we're doing here on iCast Guidance, we have a brand new way that you could possibly say thanks for doing what it is that we do. And don't get us wrong, we love to do this, and we come together every week. We're spending all of our week trying to think about how we're going to present to you a new topic. We're doing the research, and frankly, we love it. We love getting together to talk about this stuff. But we thought we should put into play some kind of system where if you wanted to pop in and buy us a cup of coffee because you like listening to the show, that we gave you a way to do that. So we are now on Ko-fi.com, and coffee is spelled ko-fi.com/Wither and Bloom Studios. You can head over to that site and you could leave us a tip, or you could even sign up for a monthly membership if you want to. And by doing this, you say to us that you really love what we're up to and you hope that we keep going. And frankly, when we get those tips, we feel supported. We feel like, oh yeah, cool. This is, we're getting some affirmation here. That's great. So anyway, consider heading over there and doing that. And if you can't afford to, that's okay. Tell a friend about the podcast, spread the word about us, and get other people to listen to us. We would appreciate that as well. Anyway, thanks again for listening, and let's get back to the show. Okay, that was a really long break, but, and I, you know what I hate about the break is you and I, the three of us, or all of us get into a conversation on the break and we realize, why aren't we talking about this on the podcast?
We do it every time.
I know. I know. And we said a lot.
That's why we can't break for too long.
We can't break for too long.
Because things get lost.
They do. I'm worried we're going to lose some stuff in there.
It's fine.
We got to do 3-sentence backstory, and we already determined who would be going. So we're going to have Rich going first with a setting. Then we're going to have Garret going with a significant life event. And then I am going to go with the thing that put me on the road to adventure. Rich, you want to start us off?
I would love to start us off. I am from an oasis in the middle of a desert.
All right. A traveler that was lost in the desert for months found our oasis.
Ooh, pretty open-ended for Todd Lee.
Do you guys remember in Super Mario 3 when you're in the desert world and you come up on the tornado and it picks you up and carries you backwards? Yeah. I'm like having vibes like that. Like the thing that put me on the road to adventure is a massive sandstorm came and pulled me up out of my oasis and carried me on a violent windstorm to a distant land. And what I really want to do is get back home, but I don't have the resources to do it.
All you have is a pair of red shoes, Dorothy.
Oh, man.
You're corny. I really like that. That was fun.
I think that works.
All I remember
That
from
was good.
Super Mario 3 is the wasn't it the raccoon tail?
Oh, yeah.
That's the one where you started
raccoon
flying.
tail.
Yes. Yeah.
So cute.
I don't remember the desert.
So the desert was as you cleared levels.
I think they usually did desert second.
Hmm.
Like it was like plains land, and then it's like usually desert or something.
They
else.
have it in most games.
Right?
Here.
Yeah, and on one of them, if you ran fast enough and I think if you double jumped while you were running fast enough, you could fly over the tornado and get past it. But it often caught you and it spun you around and moved you backwards. Anyway, let's get back to our show.
Can I bring us in?
Yeah, I would love that. Why don't you start us off since we're fresh from the break?
Okay, I'm going to start us off here. So obviously, I'm going to take this into actors territory because that's what I am. That's why you guys keep me around. Let's get pretentious.
Okay.
I love being an actor because I get to explore these characters, figure out why they do things, why they are the way they are, how their brain works, right? And usually I either do this in the bounds of a script, and that's beautiful, and it's a new experience every time. No time you do a scene is the same. And even, more so when you do something like improv, you are creating it as it goes, and it's organic and it's beautiful, and you get to explore a lot when doing that. But there's no longer form of improv than playing a TTRPG like D&D. I get 4 hours a week to explore this one character and sit in their shoes for that amount of time. The depth to which I can explore this character is compared to nothing. There is nowhere to compare that to. I will never get to do that on a film or even on a stage. The stage is closer to comparison because, I do the show. Let's say I do the show 16 times and it's different every night and you find something new every night in the character. But nowhere in the world can I sit down and explore a character as deeply as I can when I'm playing a TTRPG.
I love that from the standpoint of I keep going back to the artist brain, and I feel like I'm a sculptor and I draw and I do a lot in that regard, but you as an actor have a much more linear and direct connection to the game. I mean, I can draw all these parallels about, some of the ones I'm about to do in a little while, but yours, I think, is really interesting in how it is directly connected. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it goes hand in hand. And which is why I feel like as deeply about like my acting career as I do about, playing TTRPGs, because they go hand in hand. It's the same principle. It's the same exploration, and it's so rewarding.
So can I bring something in then? And when I bring in this theory, I'm not sure if this is something you learn in acting school or you deal with directly as an actor, but it is something that is very, very heavily planted in the discourse of art academia. And I want to bring this in because I want to see how you interpret this. But I got to introduce this book that I'm reading first because I want to put this out there. First of all, there's a book called Game Tech, The Math and Science of Games by Jeff Engelstein. And I love this book, first of all. And Jeff says something in here that as it's being, just before he got to the line, I'm thinking, wait a minute, he's talking about Gestalt theory, right? And the line is this. He says, but the question I want to ask today is this: can you understand a game by reading the rules? And that's a bigger discussion I want to have later in this podcast. But that led me to believe, well, of course not. It's so much more than the rules because, we have to deal with this idea in art of Gestalt theory. Gestalt theory is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Meaning, if I put three things together in art, let's say I'm making a painting and I have these three shapes, I have two colors, and I have a general idea of a composition, what I see as a viewer adds up to more than that. It gives me a feeling. It gives me something to think about. So there's something greater there by putting all of that on the table. But I think about this with you, the actor, and Gestalt theory. Mm-hmm. It's like the form or the parts that we would put into the mix are the actor, the lines, the story. But then, of course, you as a character, that's bigger, right?
That, but also that being said, a character becomes part of that, right? Because as the story goes on and let's say it wraps up or something, when you look back and you think about the story, you think about the overall narrative that unfolded with all your characters, right? So it becomes more than just your character, if that makes sense. Well, it becomes something larger than that.
Correct. And listen, I'm not using the word Gestalt theory to sound like I'm using big words on the podcast. I'm not doing that. Gestalt theory is interesting because it's that thing that's there, but it's not there. And it's like that thing that's just outside of your peripheral vision that you're like, oh, wow, that's the feeling we're getting when we're playing.
Well, I think what that might be is like that thing that's there almost as like the concept of emergence, like when individual things come together and they all like none of them have this property, but together they have a specific property. And it's not like one that makes the difference of making this property, okay. What I think is so special about having you at the table and Addie too, as actors, is that you encourage everyone else to play in character. The days where it was a small group and you are there and you're there, you're Tryphon, Tryphon is starting shit. And I would feel so inspired to come out as Circe. Like the things I feel like you bring out in the table is so invaluable, because when at other points it might just feel like I don't really like, I don't feel like I'm in my character. I don't feel like I'm in Circe. You start role playing and I have the opportunity to jump in. I'm fucking doing it.
Dude, that makes me feel really appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And I think that like sometimes I worry if it's a little bit tyrannical, but I know that's the game I want to play. And I know that's why I'm here. And from talking to all of you, I feel like you guys are here for the same reason. Right. You know what I mean? So I feel comfortable enough to, come out always 100% as my character, no matter how pointed and annoying it can be sometimes. Sometimes characters are pointed and annoying.
Well, yeah, but I want to jump in on this too, because, we'll often defend people playing their own games and playing the games they want to. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm creating a hierarchy here where games that are acted are better. However, I am going to say this. I back Nathan 100% on that your presence as a role player who gets into character and acts their part sets a different bar at this table. I think that is inspiring. And Garret, I'm coming for you on this one. Right?
I know.
It's more enjoyable for us.
I feel like no one, has come out of their shell more than Garret. Like Garrett's an awesome person to role play with, and he never gives himself the credit he deserves.
I mean, Nathan kind of already took this, but yeah, I was going to say you helped unlock that, I would say, just because the way that it was so easy for you to come out in character while you're playing, it's like, okay, let's give it a little try. You get in there, you dip your foot in that water just a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that when you dip in that water, like, especially coming from like a yes and actor perspective, you're what you bring to the table is never shot down. Mm-hmm. So in that reward system, you're like, oh, maybe I'll do this more because last time I did it, it was accepted and used,
Well, we have a very comfortable space here. And I think in the presence of people just doing that and getting into it, it just kind of naturally flows. Right. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, it's fun. It is expressive or whatever.
Yeah. Because, remember what we started this conversation with, and it was you in particular, Garret. You're like, I work and I go to the grind for 40 hours a week and I want to come here and unwind. Right. But we have to remember that those rote mechanisms of work where we go, we do a thing, we get a paycheck, it becomes a routine.
You're just a zombie.
Then we die.
World. Yeah.
What this space allows you to do in the gaming space is we're talking about things like escape, dream, imagine, create, learn, explore, destroy, improvise, take risks. All that stuff allows you to discover who you are.
Right.
This is the living. This is the fun.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And that's when I think like you at the table probably the most like get so much from this because like all of us other people, dip a little bit creatively in our daily life.
Yeah.
But this is like your big Garret time. This is your outlet. This is when you get to be the most true version of yourself.
Yeah. I'm not saying I'm not creative in my job. I mean, I build high-end custom cars and stuff, but it's just like what Todd was saying. It's the grind. It is the going to work every day. It's the coming home, doing the dishes, cooking the food, going grocery shopping. But coming to this table or coming to any gaming environment, because I do it at home too. I board game, I this, that. It's the escape.
Well, yeah. But creativity, though. Creativity. Yeah. We all say, oh, my job is creative. Oh, yeah, I've got, and you are. I'm not saying you're not. Yeah. But I think the thing is this about creativity, and this is often the way we delineate the difference between art and design, is design has a client. You are still creative, but you are answering to someone else. And in this world, you're only answering to yourself, which is a much purer form of creativity. And I think you're going to learn a lot more about yourself that way.
I agree.
I think this is a completely different type of creativity from what I'm used to, because you're absolutely right. Even for what I do, like developing softwares and writing scripts and, all these different coding languages, that requires creativity, because you have to say, here's a problem I have. Here's like XYZ ideas that I have. What's the best way to do it? How do I push this further to more and more efficient? That's creativity. That's critical thinking. That's problem solving. And in a way, it does feel like a type of art to me. But that's one type of creativity, and it's work creativity. And at some point I get tired where I'm like, I need a break. And what the game provides me is range of creativity and freedom of creativity, where I can come here. Exactly. Yeah. I could be like, tonight, I just want to think up some crazy fucking battle moves because we're having this giant ass battle, and I want to be like crazy wild rah, or like tonight I want to be creative in how I'm expressing myself through my character. Like it gives me so much more range for the creativity I have and I love.
Agreed. And I think that like it has become infectious. We talk about why we game. It has become so much more than just gaming. Like, yes, that's why we came to the table in the first place. But now I come to the table to be with you guys and make content, which only came from being at the table, right? And that talk about outlets, talk about so much more. It has grown into so much more, and it inspires things for me to do at home. Like whether I'm like writing a script for this new awesome role play video I'm making, and I'm like so inspired, and that only comes from being at the table, which is what we started with, and it's so simple. But it has grown to so many different outlets. We come here on Sunday, we make a podcast together because we were at the table.
I love these fucking Sundays.
Right. And I think they're actually growing. I think one thing about a practice is, and that's what we're talking about here really, is about a practice, is the more we engage with this problem. And I'm just calling it a problem because it's the only word I have. Right. It's a good problem, but it's the problem of how do we get better at this? That practice hones that skill. I just want to jump back real quick, Nathan, because you said a word earlier.
Yes.
That Jeff Engelstein in the Game Tech book mentions, along with this idea of Gestalt theory. And that is about, he says games exhibit what are called emergent properties.
Yes.
And you said things emerge. And that's really true. And I started thinking a lot about how when we talk about the balance between form and content, like let's go back to the art world for a second, the balance between form, let's make a pie chart and divide it between form and content, right? And all of a sudden now we look at the game in relation to form and content.
Right.
And if we're allowed to let the content side of that pie be larger than the form, meaning crunchy game mechanics are sort of maybe backburnered a little bit in the spirit of the narrative. Now all of a sudden emergent properties are just like flying everywhere.
Boom, boom, boom.
Right. But if we were to make the form side of the pie that much more dominant, let's take a game like War, where it's all form, right? There's no content in the game, the card game of War. It's just like, is my card higher? I win.
Yes.
So now all of a sudden there are going to be very few emergent properties. So I think tweaking the dial between form and content is a really interesting balancing act.
Well, that's funny. Thinking about emergent properties and the rule set of a game. Like I'm thinking about this in relation to types of video games. There are video games where it's very like clean cut. Here are the rules, and the rules are like, what abilities do you have? How can you use them? Where can you go? There are some where it's like really rigid. Like you go here, you do this, you go here, like Super Mario. There's not much wiggle room. or sandbox games like Skyrim. And from those set rules of what are your abilities, how far are you allowed to go, there are play styles and strategies and like all these different things that come out of these defined rule sets that weren't designed. These weren't things that are said in the rules. Here's how you should play. Nobody in chess, like chess is defined as like, here's what your guys can do. You take turns. Nowhere in the rules, I'm guessing, did it say like, here's what a queen's gambit is. Like, here's how you do this move. Here's how you do that move. It's things, the emergent properties are the things that people make up over time and form from the initial conditions they were given.
Yeah. And I'm going to call the emergent properties in this poetry.
Yeah.
You know, it's the stuff that emerges from the form that all of a sudden now has new value because it is no longer tied so stringently and directly to the form.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
that's what ties you to the game, that agency.
Absolutely.
To be able to affect the game like that.
100%. That's what creates the interest in the game is where am I going to find the poetics?
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
And we spoke about in one of our like earliest podcasts, how it was about how do you bring new players to the game? There's a huge rule set for D&D. We basically told people if you're bringing somebody new to the table, basically ignore it. Right. I think I had said,
we didn't say ignore it, but we didn't say what we said was don't prioritize.
Right.
It. Yeah.
I think what I had said was tell them, like sometimes I'm going to ask you to roll a D20 and just tell me what the number is, because if the rule set is so expansive and overwhelming, like you said during the break, if you just started rattling off the rule set of D&D to somebody, they would just go blank.
They're going to glaze over.
Know what the fuck like to do.
Right.
I think the rule set in that sense can be very limiting for a game that can be so expansive.
Right.
But it's interesting as like leading like a game for newcomers recently. I found that D&D can be incredibly easy to introduce to new people. The hardest thing to do is to make your character. So what you can do with new people, make their character. Every rule is explained by the DM. Right. I literally told them I was playing the actors. I'm like, just, do what your character would do and I'll tell you when to roll.
Right.
And they got into it and it was easy.
It
was so easy. And that's, I think Daggerheart makes it a little bit easier to create that character and get over that first hurdle to get into the game. But if you can, like do that and just make their character for them, it's so easy to get into D&D.
Yeah, I think that one rule, to say to somebody, just do what your character would do and I will tell you what to do is gold. But, as somebody who's also trying to teach DMs how to be DMs, I also don't want DMs out there to be intimidated by this idea that now you have to know everything too, because there is flexibility on that side of the gaming table. So
I think DMs have to be the most experienced person at the table, though. Unless like in a newcomer sense, if everybody's new, it's going to be tough.
Yeah. You know what? I disagree. I disagree. Yes, it would be tough to play it in the sense that and to the capacity that we think of playing the game. Right. But when I was very new, my sister was having a bridal shower. Is it a bridal? No. Like a bachelorette party.
Yeah.
I was one of the bachelorettes for my sister's wedding. Beautiful wedding. It was awesome. Yeah, of course. I'm a fucking gender quagga.
Naturally.
Yes. So anyway, we were all in Cambridge in one of my sister's friends' apartments. I created a whole homebrew story and DM'd it, having only played one shot with Todd, and none of them ever having touched D&D. And they had so much fucking fun. I learned a lot. I think if I had DM'd to this table at that time, it would have been like, dude, like, what the fuck? Like,
there's a lot of pressure.
What's going on? But I think as a table full of new players, like it was really fucking fun.
Did you find yourself stopping a lot to worry about rules and stuff as you're not an experienced DM?
No, I was like, honestly, at points I was like, fuck it. What makes most sense? I was like, screw it.
Yeah, but you know where you really fucked up in that whole scenario?
Yeah.
In the whole gender bend thing for you?
Yeah.
And this is a lesson you need to learn. Okay.
Yeah.
When you do that and this is the mistake, you cannot give the bride and the bridesmaids a run for the money on who the most beautiful person in the room is, because you were fucking unreal. And that pissed some people off.
Facts.
Right?
You're a real problem when you put some makeup on.
He got airbrushed and braided. And I was just like, holy shit.
The bride, my sister was like, told the makeup artist, yeah, do him the fuck up. Glam him the fuck out. That was the bride's choice.
Okay.
Not mine.
You did it at Todd's wedding.
I'm trying to defend your sister here.
You know, and it was her choice.
All right. So I think we're coming down to the wire here. And I just wanted to put in, before we end, I want to put in a plug, because on Tuesday nights now, we're going to be going live on YouTube the first and third Tuesdays of every month at 7 p.m. And we are going to be playing the second season of our Dungeons and Dragons game. I will be dungeon mastering these games for all of you. And we want you, the listeners, to come along. So go over to YouTube and find Wither and Bloom Studios on YouTube and follow us and check us out on Tuesday nights. Participate in the chat. We have some unique things we're going to bring to the table and onboard slowly over time, where you, the audience, are going to get to participate in some way, shape, or form in the game.
Yes.
Hey, Todd, what's this campaign called?
This campaign is called Rising. And it's a lot about tension and things that are going on. Season 2 is going to be kind of cool. Thanks for reminding me of that.
And you could totally come into season 2 without having watched season 1.
Correct.
For sure.
Correct. We're gonna explain it all. So we're looking forward to having you there. Guys, this was a great chat. I really enjoyed this.
This is a good time. Yeah.
All right. If you have thoughts or reasons on why you game and what brings you to the table, come tell us in the comments. Thanks for listening today. We love having you along for the ride, and we will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.
Peace.
Please. We love gaming.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to iCast Guidance. iCast Guidance is produced by Todd Lambrix, Garret Brennan, and Rich Frohman. We drop this podcast every week, and we are looking forward to having you hang out for more. Don't forget to head on over to Wither and Bloom Studios on YouTube, follow our channel, and definitely comment on what you see there. We will probably read those on this show. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to next time.